Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Appraiser eLearning webinar. We are happy to have everybody here. We've got some really special guests here today. And when I say special, I mean, special. We've got John Dingeman from Class Valuation with us. We've got Mark Walser from Incenter, and John Brenan. Who are you with now?
Clear Capital.
Clear Capital, John Brenan. All of these guys have been around for a long time in the appraisal industry. We're happy to have them here. And we're talking today about some tech things you can use as an appraiser to handle these new types of appraisals. So John, I'm going to let you take it away.
It's John.
John Dingeman, sorry.
I was waiting for that one.
Thanks, Al, for having us here, and good to see you, Mark and John. I think, we all champion technology solutions, and I remember getting into this business 20 years ago and thinking that some of the ways people did things, appraisers specifically, were antiquated, and always have been looking for tech solutions, right, to help drive efficiencies and credibility to my appraisal reports. And I think that's what the three of us and maybe some others are doing today with regards to technology and providing alternative solutions to keep appraisers relevant.
John Brenan, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, thanks, Al, and again, thanks for having us here today. And I echo John's comments. I think the one thing that that I would say that having been in this profession for a minute, it's the concept of change and being willing to accept change. You cannot possibly think of an example where in this particular case technology has not affected a profession. Doctors doing virtual visits. I mean, just 10 years ago, that's probably something that people, didn't really envision. Of course, we have this awful pandemic that has really, created so much hardship and sadness in so many people's lives. But it did offer a glimpse into a way that the different ways that things can be done. Some good, some maybe not so good. But the biggest message that I could send is that to remain relevant, and that's really the goal, and John mentioned that, to remain relevant, you have to be willing to accept change and to consider change. And so if there's anything that I can convey in this message is that.
I think I'll just I'll chime in just real quick. I defer in many ways to both Johns here, because both of them have forgotten more about appraising than I'll ever know. But there's also the just the fact that just echoing the fact that all three of us are here on this call. I mean, we are competitors, but we are also friends. And what they're doing, I highly respect, and I think there's a 360 respect that goes on in the industry, because all of us who've been in the AMC world and the appraisal world, we know that the pace of change accelerates, but sometimes appraisers have trouble keeping up with those changes. However, I do want to go back to something that at a recent NAA conference that I heard from an appraiser I had dinner with there, and I thought it was a very good quote. I shared it then, and I'll share it now, which is that it's not that appraisers aren't used to change. Because his point to me was, since I've been appraising for 30 years, it's always changed. We changed from physical photos to digital photos. We changed from using MLS and looking it up in a book to now going online and using those tools. So it's not about whether the change happens or even if appraisers can adopt to it. His point to me was, we just have to understand it. And if we understand what the change is and why we're doing it, then we'll adopt it. So I think that's part of what the three of us are on here with our respective companies also trying to do, is engaging in the dialogue with you, with all of you. We're not saying that our solutions are perfect or that we have all of the answers just yet, but what we are trying to do is make sure that we collaborate with the appraisal community. I think I speak for all three of us when I say that. John Brenan talked about relevancy. All of our businesses are dependent upon appraisers. I think there is a misconception in a lot of the appraisal world too about how certain entities like the GSEs and others perceive appraisers. Whenever we talk to them, it's all about how do we get the appraisers to work with us and be part of these changes. So I think right now appraisers have a really great opportunity here in 2022 to be a part of the change. And that means not only embracing the change, but also learning and understanding the technologies that we have. And I'll since Bryan joined here, I'll finish with one thought. I came from the real estate industry before I went into the appraisal world. And back when I was in the real estate industry, I knew a guy who founded a small company you may have heard of called Zillow. And it was so interesting in those 2 to 3 years from 2003 to 5, 6, all the realtor conferences, NAR events that I would ever go to, you'd have roomfuls of agents sitting there with the founders of Zillow and some of the Google folks on there too, and basically just standing up and saying, you guys are trying to take away our profession. You're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. And it didn't turn out that way. All it turned out to be was that Zillow really turned into a tool for consumers in many cases to connect with real estate agents. But if you look at 2022, real estate agents are going strong as ever, right? And it's because they just learned how to take those changes, utilize them, fit their model into it, and make it work. So I think we're all here on the same level, just saying, when you see change coming in technology, understand that you can be part of it and you can be central to it, and you can really define how it changes the profession and look at it that way. And I think if you do, you'll find that the solutions that we all have are solutions that you can use in your business and that will really help the industry at large. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Mark, thank you for that. That's a really good insight into the notion of change. And I think one of the things that's scaring a lot of appraisers these days is there's so much change happening all at once, and it seems a little bit overwhelming. And the fact that John Brenan, John Dingeman, Mark, you're all here to help appraisers get their head around some of these changes is great. Bryan Reynolds, partner here at Appraiser eLearning, has joined the webinar. Bryan, thanks for being here. I'm going to hand the moderating over to you. I'm going to take myself mute and stop the video, and I will send you guys questions through the app as they come in.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. So all the viewers right now, don't forget to send your questions in. I can't see them until Hal sends them over, but that's what we're here for. So if you have any specific questions, and I have lots, so don't worry, guys, I'm going to start in on you right away. But if the viewers have any questions, please put those down in the chat. Recognize I can't see those until Hal sends them over to me. We just ask that you be polite, civil, kind, professional. But I always let all my guests know that hard questions are allowed. So we're not going to shy away or just kid glove these guys. They're big boys. They can handle the hard questions. And so we welcome those. I think that helps the conversation and maybe helps try to shine a light on some of those areas of concern. So get those coming in, and guys, as those come in, just hang tight. I will tee those up and read those during the broadcast. Thank you three for being here. As you know, this has been a 3-day webinar series. We had some appraisers that actually do desktops on day one. And then we had the chief appraiser for Fannie Mae, the chief appraiser for Freddie Mac on yesterday, talking about policy and when they allow the use of these. And, we learned yesterday that those were appear to be kind of a small scale right now. So I'll just throw that to you guys right now. What percentage of purchases are we getting a desktop appraisal on that you're seeing? John D?
I don't know the percentage, Bryan. I mean, I think there's for desktops in general, for us, we do a couple of different things, but I don't know that we're seeing as many as we thought we would see early on, but we're seeing plenty.
Okay.
On a daily basis. So,
John, Brenan, what about you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Bryan, and good morning. I think that I think that we're seeing a decent amount starting to come in. I think, you know, one of the things that we've observed in talking with the GSEs is that there are a lot of lenders that are still confused between desktops and hybrids and traditionals and where all this stuff fits. And so it's a learning curve. And I think some of that confusion has resulted in some lenders saying, I'm not going to mess with it. I just want a traditional appraisal. So there's still a bit of this educational purpose, but you know, I'll say, as I've said before, you know, not all desktop appraisal assignments are created equal. I've heard from an appraiser who said, you know, I got a request and they just said, go do the desktop. And they weren't given any information. They weren't given, you know, all they knew is because they're for purchases that there was an MLS listing that they could refer to, but there was no floor plan, there was no property data collection, there was nothing. So it's also important to remember that when you say desktops, at this point in time, that's not a uniform assignment that you get from everybody. The folks on this call, we all do things to try to make the assignment as easy and provide credible assignment, provide the appraiser the ability to perform credible assignment results. But that is still not 100% consistent across the industry.
Gotcha. And Mark, what you're doing is a little different with the remote val. We've had you on a webinar once before, kind of demonstrating that product. What about you? Are you seeing an increase in demand for that type of product, or you know, what percentage of appraisal reports are you requesting that would fall into that category?
Yeah, I think our experience is mirroring very much what both Johns have shared as well. I mean, we were expecting out the gate that about 10 to 15% of our purchase volume would probably have a request for that. And what we have found is that it's been about a third of that. And I would very much echo what John Brenan said. First, there is a lot of confusion out there on the lender side, no question about it. There's also conservatism on some of the larger banks. So when we look at some of our larger institutions that are, you know, bigger name banks, for example, many of them have not even approved the use of the desktop yet because they are just, I think, still trying to learn about it. Had one lender basically say, hey, nice, that's a really nice concept and a nice desktop you have there, you first, right? Basically saying they wanted to see how the mortgage bankers, right, the non-depository institutions, you know, mortgage bankers as opposed to banks and credit unions tend to be a little bit more forward in terms of how they adopt new things. So, you know, we're seeing more of our volume coming from that side of it, not the banking side of it. We are seeing a bit of a change though now starting to occur. And I think what's coming this summer, unfortunately in our industry, we all know it and we've seen it just in general in life. The last 5 years seem to be a pretty predictable stream of disasters that start in the summers and move into the falls, from floods to fires to hurricanes to tornadoes to all of those things. And for the first time, maybe right this year, the three of us, right, our companies have solutions for that don't allow for the entire process to grind to a halt because you just can't drive into a neighborhood because it's been totally destroyed and right. Law enforcement won't let you in. So we're already doing this with disaster inspections now and have been for the last year and a half, and it's gone very well where we've been able to turn a disaster inspection, a loss draft insurance inspection, even a home equity valuation. We're just trying to get condition of the property, like a PCR report, turning those around in 24 hours or less with our virtual inspectors. So now we're looking at, okay, can the appraiser do the same thing? And I think the answer is yes, whether it's with help, like through a hybrid, or whether it's something virtual like ours, where you're connecting directly. I think all of those scenarios are going to help with that situation. I think a lot of the lenders are now looking at that and saying, okay, I'm ready to start engaging. I see this coming. And
right. See the opportunity. Right.
Let's face it. Yeah, and let's face it, Brian, there's one other thing that's also kind of playing here, and you know, we all have our various opinions about it, but when you look at the idea of some of what's happened with fair lending discussions, with some of the bias and discrimination discussions we've all been involved in, you know, whatever side you come out on that, I think we all have to recognize that the use of technology, whether it's Class's product, Clear Capital's product, ours, can have some positive impact on that as well, just in terms of accessibility to appraisal. And that's all something that the industry itself is grappling with. So those things, I think, will start increasing the uptake as well as we look at.
Yeah, it was interesting this morning. I saw on the news a house actually slide off an embankment into the water and just kind of float away. It was incredible watching that. But to your point, the disaster, and I've got a class next week. So any viewers interested, it's on diversifying your practice. So it's diversifying your practice inside and out. We've got some seating available for that. That's on Monday and Tuesday. So check out appraisereLearning.com for that. And that's an opportunity. That's another opportunity. And we don't wish, a catastrophic event on anyone, obviously, but not far from where I'm sitting, we had a tornado rip through not long ago and knocked down a bunch of property. And I know we did some inspections or just to confirm, whether or not a house was damaged, what appeared to be damaged or not appeared. And so that's another opportunity. It's another book of business, if you will. And it sounds like you folks have some tools that may help the appraiser do that. Now, I want to go ahead and ask this question, and it's actually a question that I would normally wait until the end of the broadcast, but we had this question, I think, both days. And I want to thank you guys for being here. There are obviously a lot of appraisers that are, as Hal said earlier, resistant to change. We as human beings are resistant to change. And there's a lot of appraisers out there that no matter what you say, I'm not going to do one of these, right? And I've said publicly, I've got mixed feelings on it personally, but there is a segment of appraisers that want more information. And as you get more information, you can make a better decision. You can make a more informed decision instead of having a knee-jerk decision. So one of the questions I saw yesterday as well as the day before is, hey, if I want to start doing some of these types of appraisals, the desktop appraisals, how do I go about doing that? Where do I go? Do I need to be trained on that? What is the next step? Give me an A, B, and C for moving into the direction of doing these. So whichever one of you want to start, I'd like for each of you to answer that question though, because we had several appraisers ask that question. Where do I go to get started on these?
Bryan, I guess we can continue the path. I'll start, but I think our answers are going to be very similar in regards to this. And I think it's important for appraisers. You mentioned where do I learn? In much of the knee-jerk reaction, I think, is coming from our prior experiences. And technology advances fast. So maybe, wow, this was a horrible experience before, but that was 5 years ago or 3 years ago. Shoot, 1 year ago makes a huge difference, right? And then, of course, we hear anecdotal stories without any context through our peers in CE classes or online in forums and in Facebook and LinkedIn and stuff. And so there's some misunderstandings and misconceptions. And I think all of us reach out to appraisers and do different things. For us, we do demos for appraisers twice a week. It is to understand how to consume the information that's being collected from our pro scanners and property data collection, how our technology works, all with the intention of inspiring confidence. John, Mark, and I talked about being, remaining relevant in the process when we got started. And I believe that to be true. I think it's our opportunity to provide a service to our clients who are demanding a product like this. It isn't with the intent of compromising our ethics and or the consumer trust, right? And so it really is comprehensive. And if you see it, it feels different, it looks different than you expected. And so I encourage appraisers to participate in those types of demos. I can put it in the link for us. And I'll let John and Mark do their thing.
Yeah, we'll have Hal push that over to the stream. Or so if you want to put, because I know somebody's thinking, okay, how do I sign up for that training? You said you have it twice a week. How do I get on the list, right? So John, if you've got a link that makes that happen, let Hal know, and we'll put that out there on the broadcast. John, what about you? Is there specialized training, or do I just call you up and say, John, I'm ready, send me some desktops?
Well, if you're ready, you're ready. We got you. If you're not, So first of all, appraisers that are on our panel already that may not be that may only be performing traditional 1004s can reach out to our panel team and ask about being added for desktops or hybrids or whatever it is. If they go to our website, clearcapital.com, there is an entire section about the different products and services and availability. And it does tell you, give you some background and training and tell you what you get as an appraiser. And I think, you know, in terms of the property data collection, the floor plans, et cetera, I think the other thing that, you know, I really want to, again, underscore here is, you know, as an appraiser, and you mentioned it, Bryan, when you talked about the disaster inspections and such, you want to expand, you want to have more opportunities. You may try them and say, this isn't for me, that's fine, but don't be afraid to try them.
Right.
You know, I was speaking last night with a young appraiser, someone who's been in the business for, you know, less than a year, and their perspective on we talked about desktop appraisals, and their perspective without the history like we have with some of the years we add up with us on this call, you know, was like, I cannot understand why some appraisers are reluctant to perform desktop appraisals. You know, and I said, you know, well, you know, historically appraisers have gone into the houses, they go through the neighborhoods, they look at, you know, and say, okay, I get that, I understand that. But you're telling me that I can stay at my desk, I can get a very, very detailed property data collection with literally dozens of photos. I can get a very detailed floor plan of the property, showing the interior walls, showing everything else. And I can sit at my desk and I don't have to spend out here in California $7 a gallon for gas.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about, you know, crime. I don't have to worry about things. And this is a bad thing. So it's perspective. You know, I think that boy, do we need younger people, more diverse people coming into this profession. That's a whole nother talk. But when you see that, when you actually see that come about, it really makes you get a reset and say, you know, wait a minute, what is my opposition to this? It's because it's different. And so, yeah,
sure, it's a change. It's a
so,
change to what we're accustomed to doing. Yeah, that's
right.
the big.
That's
and that's true. You know, I talk about this a lot, and you know, I just had a class the last 2 days, and I said, you know, how many of you were excited when UAD was announced? How many of you were excited when the 1004 MC form came out? How many of you were excited when the new form came out in 2005? And, you know, we all think the sky's falling when there's some sort of change. And then we realize, yeah, you know, it probably wasn't that bad. Mark, I'm gonna let you answer the same question, but I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question. All right. And I'm gonna have all three of you because I want to make sure that our audience kind of knows your product and what you're doing. And Mark, you're a little different on the remote val, but I want John Brenan and John Dingeman to also answer this question because the viewers may not realize exactly what you guys do, right? What you, like John's scanning stuff, right? He's got a little thing by his head up there. It says scan me, right? So what I'd like to do, number one, Mark, if somebody's interested in doing these products, the remote val with you, is there a training session? How do they get signed up with that? And then number two, just move right into a conversation about your particular product and how it's a little different. And then we'll come in reverse order. John Brenan, you can talk about what you guys have, and then John Dingeman, you'll close that out. So Mark?
Yeah, thank you. So I did put in the chat there a link for anyone who's interested. We do individual trainings, and we also do regular trainings on remote val, both for our panel who already work with us, as well as any new appraiser that wants to try it. We do have some consultants out there as well, and we've run some classes with McKissick, and we'll probably do another series of those over the summer. So you can certainly watch out for those as well. As it relates to you know, the question about what's the differences, you know, that between our products. So remote val, we designed it originally kind of prior to the hybrid, the desktop, to be essentially a replacement for a full appraisal, right? When we designed that product, we were like, okay, in all but touch and smell, can we basically convey what an appraiser can do and allow them to use our tool to do that? So remote val does provide two things. It has One hand of it is remote virtual inspection. So it allows you to live view what's at the property, who's at the property, using a property contact who's there, whether that is an agent, a homeowner, a contractor, buyer, seller. It doesn't really matter. Whoever is there with the phone, you're using their phone to virtually see in real time what's happening at the property. You're doing a live inspection. You're talking with them. You're asking questions. You're interviewing them. You're asking them to turn the phone here, turn it there so I can see. And then you have the ability also to do remote photography. So you can actually just with your mouse be clicking and taking pictures. Those pictures are time-stamped, geo-stamped, right? So there's a total veracity as to where and when that person and that camera are. So, but you're the one taking the photos. So you're essentially doing a full appraisal product on your own, right? Using the 1004 desktop, which is the form we were using. And it's the same one that's now been adopted by the GSEs. In addition to that, we also do measurements. So we have the ability to do measurement just across walls, and we also have 3D scanning, similar to the products that Clear Capital and Cubicasa have, and of course the Class has as well. The scanning again will be done through the phones. I gave a couple of webinars previously where I talk about the technology that are built into these phones, right? They're 3D scanning, their 3D augmented reality capability, their LiDAR. So when a person at the property has an iPhone or an Android phone, you can activate the remote scanning and just have them scan around the room. You can also do that in a hybrid scenario. If you're sending a trainee out, or if you're your trainee, for example, and you just want them to go scan it for you, you can. And obviously in participating in the upcoming PDR and then some of the other hybrid pilots that are there, we'll also have the ability for scanners to go out on your behalf and scan. So either way, you're going to have the video, you're going to have, you're going to see what was done. You can virtually revisit the property with the video, and you can also take more photos if you need to. One thing we found, like for example, on desktops, right, there's some requirements that you actually have, certain types of photos, including, for example, the rear photo of the property. Sometimes in an MLS, photo, when you get the photos from a real estate agent, sometimes they forget to actually put that into the listing, right? You have just the front and all the nice glossy side pictures in the street, but you don't have a rear photo. So you don't have to abandon the desktop. In our case, you can say, all right, let me just connect to the realtor or the seller, whoever, for a few minutes, walk around to the back of your house, sir, and point your phone at it, and I'll grab a picture from here. And you can do that as an appraiser with our app. So that's the fundamental difference, is that we also bring the remote virtual inspection to pair with this. Oh, Brian, you seem to be muted. I don't know why. I was trying to talk there.
Thank you. Yeah,
there we go.
I've got multiple mute buttons here. Whether you know I'm muted or not, I might be. And sometimes that's a good thing. Thank you for that, Mark.
That's the I wish Mark would shut up button.
No.
Yeah.
So for the viewers, I just want to show real quick. You're watching us via the YouTube channel right now, and if you play around with that YouTube channel a little bit, first of all, what we recommend you do is hit that subscribe button right there. That way you're in the know. But if you can look through all our videos, this one here was the appraisal report webinar with the remote val, and Mark does a good job going through and giving a demo of that product. So that's something that you might want to do, is to just kind of go back and look some of those videos. John have been on multiple times with us, and so you can go back and kind of take a look at those. John Brenan, tell us a little bit about what you guys have and how that's different from what Mark was talking about, and then we'll round it out with John, and that way our viewers know exactly what you guys have to offer.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. So I think first of all, I'll say that, there are similarities between all three of our products, but there are obviously differences. We use the technology that many have heard of called Cubicasa. It is a floor plan that is used, just as Mark said, with your smartphone. Whether it's the appraiser, whether it's a property data collector, whether it's the homeowner, they can go through in just a matter of minutes and scan the property. It will then be uploaded. You don't have to have any type of connection at the time you do the scan to Wi-Fi or anything like that. But when you do reconnect, it will be uploaded. And then at that time, it'll be curated. The video that has been taken on the phone will be curated, and the appraiser will receive the floor plan back in a matter of hours. And what happens then is the appraiser has the ability to review that floor plan and make sure that it did come out the way that the appraiser saw it. And so if there are edits that need to be made, if there's something that needs to be changed, that can be done as well. But the thing I do want to underscore too is what, Mark kind of alluded to this. There are some appraisers that say, wait a minute, the homeowner did this Cuba Casa floor plan. How is it that meets the requirement on Cert 10 for a disinterested third party, right? That's where you have to get your data from. The GSEs have maintained that the type of applications that we're talking about, all three of us, that when those applications are providing the data. So it doesn't matter if it's the homeowner, it doesn't matter if it's the broker, it doesn't matter who it is, that data is actually coming from the application, the software application. And because of the built-in security features, their geofence, their timestamp, there's so many features built in there that people cannot hack them and say, okay, I'm gonna add 1,000 square feet to this scan. I can't, it can't be done. So the GSE,
or I'm not going to go to my neighbor's house and pretend this is my kitchen because they remodeled their kitchen, and they don't care if I pretend it's mine so that I can get a bigger loan amount, right?
That's right.
You would know that. I mean, alarms and flags would go off to say, hey, this is the wrong property.
Yeah, the technology is really amazing in that, it also tracks when you start the scan and the time that it takes that you go through. So to your point, Brian, you're going through the house, and then all of a sudden you go across the street to the Ritz-Carlton and show the foyer and say, this is my living room. No, it's going to show the time that you took, and it's going to show that path. And so the security is really good. And I'll say this, we've heard everything that covers the waterfront from, oh, I don't think this is accurate, to I can't believe how accurate it is. And I will say this, as more and more of the recent editions of the phones, for example, the iPhone 12 and 13 with their LiDAR, these things become extremely accurate. And I think that done properly, I talked to an appraiser yesterday who said, I really wanted to nail this. They had a 5,000 square foot, 2-story house, and they measured it conventionally, with a laser, also measured it with a tape, and also measured it with Cuba Casa. And they said they absolutely were stunned how accurate it was. And this is not just Cuba Casa, I'm talking about all of our technologies now. Yeah. The accuracy is there when performed properly, and it really provides a benefit to the appraiser that can do that type of floor plan in a matter of minutes, as opposed to taking an hour to sketch out a difficult assignment. So I would encourage everybody to try all three of our technologies, see what you think. And if it works for you, go for it.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, John. John, tell everybody about what Class does a little differently. And you're muted, John.
You might have muted me, Brian, but
no.
Ours is called Property Fingerprint, and Envision Capture is the app. We're leveraging the iOS system today for that. There is a property data collector. We have a network of pro scanners that scan the properties, and they can range from appraisers and trainees to the home imagery professionals that serve the market today. But they are actually scanning the property. It's authenticated data source, as John pointed out, and then our solution, the data is uploaded very similarly. It goes through a QC process anyways, but it's fungible across all different appraisal types and through both GSEs. It can be used for desktop, hybrid, traditional. I think somebody asked the question about their traditional assignments. You could use it there. And so once the scan is complete, the appraiser is provided that data. They're provided a floor plan that meets the GSE requirements and the ANSI standards, even though that's not a requirement for desktop today. And then we provide all the 2D flat images and a 3D tour, which we consider to be a digital twin of the property from both the inside and the outside. And so you're really just visiting it from your desktop, only in 4K. 3D imagery, right? So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So I've seen some of these products, and they are good. They're unbelievably accurate, And I said yesterday, I really think the way of the future is we're going to see more and more of this technology. You know, it's not going away for sure. It's going to be expanded and utilized more and more. And my thoughts are long term, which may not really be long. You know, we rely on surveyors for the size of a site, and we know that that's highly accurate, and that's what we rely. We develop our opinions based on the size of a site from a professional surveyor. I think fast forward, at some point, we're going to have a professional measurer or scanner or some sort of device capturing the size of that property. And then because we know that it's highly accurate, we'll be able to use that throughout the process. I predict insurance companies are going to use it, and real estate agents and appraisers and assessors probably at some point, because it's highly accurate. You just can't ignore that, like it or not. Guys, we're not really going to talk about fees. You know, I had someone ask about that on day one, and that's a touchy subject. You know, you can't price fix. You can't, you know, you could get into serious trouble talking about fees. I'll say something, and if you guys, you know, we're not going to talk about specific fees, but if you want to address this in any way, I'll let you do that. I will say this, you know, I have 13 people on my valuation team. 13. I have appraisers, I have analysts, I have trainees, I have admins, I have data entry folks, I have schedulers, right? And you know, so the appraiser that's out there doing something's not getting what you might call the full fee, but they're making more money doing it my way. They're not only making more money, they have a life again. You know, one of my appraisers works Monday through Friday, and Friday he plays golf a lot. He doesn't talk to clients. I have somebody else that does that. One of my trainees is out looking at property now, Sean, and he's a preacher and a trainee. He's been doing remodel work for over 30 years. I mean, he knows houses better than me and probably the other appraisers on the team put together. He called me and he said, man, he said, I looked at this property and the real estate agent happened to know me because it's a small town that I was in. The loan officer knows me. He said, I'm not used to this, Bryan. The real estate agent called me. The loan officers called. I've got all these people calling me, and he's never had anyone call him before because they call my office and other people handle that. You know, there's a doctor's office here in town. They have 3 doctors or 3 providers, as you call it. They have the doctor, they have a nurse practitioner, and they have a PA, right? Physician's assistant. All 3 of them provide, right? I said, how many employees do you have? How many helpers do you have? I don't know. We have so many, I don't know. We've got, I don't know, maybe 30, right? So when you build a team like that, you can do more work. And, you know, if you haven't heard my podcast, it's called the Appraisal Update Podcast. I do one about running your appraisal office like Chick-fil-A, right? Now, Chick-fil-A could have one person in there, one appraiser or one cook, and do everything and maybe put out a great burger, right? But they're only going to be able to do so much because you got to work the drive-through, you got to take the order, you got to drop the fries, you got to wipe down the tape. They have a whole team, and as a consequence, they move a lot of volume, don't they? And they don't jeopardize quality of service. The food's great, it's right, and they move 30 cars in 10 minutes. I know because I was in that line. 30 cars in 10 minutes because they have an army working together. So it's just something to think about. Do you guys want to address fees at all? And I know you got to be really, really careful there. I would just say you're the business owner. You're the one in charge. I've done a couple of these, and the fee was pretty much the same as what we normally. I was surprised at that. If we get a quote for something that I don't think is acceptable, we turn it down. We don't take it.
Right.
John, Mark, do you guys want to speak on that at all, or?
Yeah, I'll just speak real quickly just for our product. I mean, and for our approach is exactly what you said, Bryan. We telegraph this very clearly to our lender partners too, and say, look, the fees for this 1004 desktop are the same. for as they would be for a 1004 URAR. And the reasons why are because, well, several, right? One, the appraiser is essentially doing the same amount of work. I mean, you are analyzing, you're creating your report. 80% of your work is that. The inspection is just being sort of virtually done, and the floor plan is being created for them, but everything else is pretty much on par. So what we tell them is we're paying the appraiser the same fee we would pay for a regular appraisal report. We're charging you the same as well. The difference is speed. The advantage is speed. And all of our lenders, especially during these last busy months, they're totally into that. They're happy to pay a normal appraisal fee as long as they know they're getting something back pretty much in a 3 to 5 day time frame. And that's what we tell them. We don't, promise the overnight delivery or anything like that, because again, appraisers do need time to put a good report together. So they're perfectly fine in our experience with 5 days or less, knowing that you're doing it virtually. And then we've talked about this too before, Brian. I think the two Johns will agree with me on this. There are some instances, especially with our product as a virtual product, right, where you as an appraiser would be looking at the property virtually or looking at the data you've been given and say, you know what, I'm a little concerned about this. Maybe I see something that causes me to do a double take. Like we've actually had it happen before on a live inspection. And I was sitting in on that inspection where the appraiser was looking with the homeowner at a wall, and it looked like there was some type of damage on the wall. And he asked the questions to the homeowner live, right? What is that? Was that water damage? What kind of damage is that? He didn't really get what he considered to be a satisfactory answer. So he said, you know what? I'm not comfortable with finishing this as a virtual inspection. I'm going to go ahead and schedule, and I'm going to come out tomorrow and see it for myself. That's totally fine. And the appraiser should have and does have the ability to say that when using any tool, right? So we want to tell the lender, look, if that happens, we want to pivot to a full appraisal inspection if we need to. And we don't want to come back and have to charge you and add another fee for a trip fee or something like that. So the appraiser is already getting their full fee. And if they need to go in person, they can. And again, everyone, I'm just giving you perspective from our lender clients. Every one of them has said that works for us. They're not looking for, hey, how do we get lower appraisal fees? Every now and then you hear some brokers say that, but the average lender, if you look at a mortgage bank or a bank or a credit union, they get what you guys do on a daily basis. They understand the risk, they understand the liability, and they want you to be doing it because in part of that liability. So they're not going to sit here and nickel and dime us for those types of fees. They just want predictability, they want speed, and they want quality. And I think we can use all three of our technologies, right? I think you guys would agree, deliver that. And also one last thing, John made a point about floor plans as well, John Brenan. The other reason, Brian, I think you've seen a little bit of a slow start in this is because so many AMCs don't have any solution for this floor plan requirement. We three do. And so I would say to the appraisers that are listening to this as well, if you are working with a lender and they're asking for these types of products, but they're not providing you ways to deliver them, or vendors like us that can deliver them, you may want to also recommend to your lenders, to cut through some of the confusion out there, recommend our companies to them, because the lenders also just need to have it served upon a platter. If they are working with companies like Clear Capital, like Class, like Incenter, that can provide the tools for you guys to do these credibly and quickly and provide the floor plans, it will help with the adoption. So just wanted to say that.
Let's get into some questions here. We've got several questions coming in, and I want to allow time for that. We're past the halfway mark here, so let's dive into some questions, and you guys just jump in. Whoever wants to take one of these. So Sean is asking a question. Thanks for being here, Sean. Sean asked a question: can you use third-party measuring app, like I think they mean Cubicasa, in traditional reports as well? So can an appraiser, if they say, hey, I like your stuff, I'd like to use it just when I go do a traditional appraisal? John?
John Dingeman mentioned this earlier. Absolutely. Any of our products can be used, out of the three of us, can be used in any traditional assignment. It's not exclusively for hybrids or desktops.
Okay, great. Priscilla talks about John Dingeman's model. says this might be a chance for you to get into your products. So, you know, we don't have time for really John to give a demonstration here, but I have seen it in action live personally, and some members of my team actually scanned a couple of properties, and I will say it works really well. So I'd like to see real estate agents utilize these measuring tools as well. It would help us if they had more accurate GLA data. So you guys have anything with that? Is there any kind of push or an opportunity where the real estate agents could utilize these tools to help with their listings, and or could this be a side gig or additional revenue stream or book of business for appraisers? I mean, could appraisers say, hey, I want to take one of your products and offer to measure properties for brokers or real estate agents for their listings?
Yeah, and I think Mark wants to say something, but I just real quickly, absolutely, on the first part of this, we are working very closely with brokers and MLS providers across the country to try to encourage brokers and agents to do the floor plan scans, to provide the information, and on these purchases for desktops, where then all of a sudden they get a sale and an appraiser can be provided the entire information, hopefully turn something around real quickly and still get paid a reasonable fee, by the way, for a desktop appraisal assignment.
And to add to that, because we're doing the exact same thing and working with constituencies in the real estate side to do it. I think the point that John Brenan just made about having the data embedded in the listing is actually, if you look at the future of everything, and you know, at Incenter, we're not just appraisal, right? We touch all parts of the mortgage process through 11 different companies, including title and settlement and everything else. We are looking at Bryan, that buzzword, the blockchain, right? So when you look at what's happening with the blockchain and how it's being now applied to real estate and mortgage, what you may see as appraisers in very short order here is that a lot of this listing data is not just going to have traditional listing data, right? You're going to see measurements, you're going to see floor plans, you're going to see all of these things get embedded into the listing up front. But if it's secured by blockchain, then you as practitioners downstream, right? We're not just talking about appraisers, we're talking about mortgage companies, title companies, we're talking about all the different players that touch a mortgage can look at that data and go, it's not only been accurately gathered, but it's also hasn't been tampered with. I can tell if it's ever been changed, and I can trust it because it's not just being put on the listing by some random agent who just sort of did this and scanned something and then it's there, right? There's also some security elements and some data transfer integrity that's going to go behind this. So I think it's important to look down the road at that, and that is coming, and really look at the present now. And as appraisers, right, adopt these technologies and start learning how to use them now, because you want to not only use them in your current business, you want to trust how they do things, so that when other practitioners, to Bryan's point, start using it and putting it into the assets we're all using, you understand how the sausage was made, and you can really say, I can trust you using that down the line.
Yeah. So Jennifer talks about fees. Fees on desktops are low. We addressed that already. Mark said they're paying about the same amount. So the concern they have is that, you know, we're willing to pay that amount to get them back quicker, right? I mean, that's the gist of what I'm hearing here. CMP Appraisal says, please explain which transactions are eligible for the URAR hybrid and URAR desktop. Only owner-occupied purchase transactions with under 90% LTV, or are they being used for refinances and HELOCs?
John will keep me honest here, and Mark as well. Desktops are purchase only, and it is 90% LTV. There are some exceptions on how that works, and that's really related to DU and LP messaging for the GSEs on a loan application. hybrids have a broader use, right? So it goes across purchase and refinances and a wide variety of loan products. And it really is about a lender being involved in that test and learn with one of the specific GSEs, if not both of them. And that's how those proceed. So, we're all players in both of those arenas.
And I can add one other thing as well in the private lending space, non-QM lending in particular, but also if you look at portfolio lending with banks and credit unions, there is a wider and wider acceptance that this can be used there on the 1004 desktop with very little restrictions. The main issue in the non-QM and private lending space is, will the rating agencies accept appraisals that are done this way from a valuation standpoint in terms of rating agency acceptance? And that is actually occurring now. Most of the rating agencies follow Fannie and Freddie, to John Dingeman's point. They follow the guidelines that they put out typically when they do their underwriting standards and everything else. So you're going to see the rating agencies as well start expanding their acceptance and use of this, which is going to then turn these types of products even larger than the Fannie and Freddie silos into other areas of our industry. So you should be prepared for an expansion of that.
John, I think you tried to answer this in our little thing, and nobody can see our little thing but me. So Robert had asked, it sounds like desktops is the only product being tried on a wider scale, parentheses, not hybrid. So can you address Robert's question on that?
I think John and I both tried to address it. So, I mean, hybrids, I know John's been doing them for probably 3 years or just over, and so have we. I'm not sure about Mark, hundreds of thousands of hybrids. Desktops are just new as of March, right? And so the number of desktops are smaller, and I think we've already talked about the limited number of participants in that space, and Mark Walser did a good job of explaining one way to combat that. And I think the three of us collectively believe that by the end of 2022, you're going to see more agents providing this data because they know desktop is a possibility and yet couldn't move forward because I didn't have the data up in front for the appraiser, right?
Yeah.
And just to underscore real quickly, I know we're running short of time. Real quickly,
You're fine.
The hybrids still are in the GSE's test and learn or pilot programs. Yep. They have not been added to the permanent selling guide like desktops were effective earlier this year. So that's the difference that you're seeing, because desktops can be open to anybody, any of the lenders that qualify. The hybrids are part of the test and learn, and they have to specifically be approved to offer those.
So I want to bring up a topic, and I've heard this a lot, and Hal pushed this over to me. He says lots of discussion about liability, same liability for the appraiser. Thoughts? And I know, we've heard that a lot. An appraiser was nervous. He was threatened to be sued on a drive-by because he didn't actually physically go in that property. And I know there's a lot of concerns about, well, I didn't go in there, so am I at a higher level of exposed risk for a complaint? And I'd like to know if you guys have had any of those questions where you've had a consumer, a homeowner, or a buyer. Hey, this deal fell apart. I was buying this house and I met that 90% or less threshold. They ordered a desktop and John appraised it for 160 and I had an offer in at 175 and I lost the house. And heck, John didn't even go in the thing. Have you had any of those calls? And if so, what level of percentage have you had? And then just continue that conversation with potential liability concerns for appraisers.
Well, I'll jump in real quick and get us started. So we haven't had complaints like that whatsoever. What we've had sometimes is the homeowner or the broker, being unclear about the role of the person who's doing the property data collection. So we try really hard that we train our people to explain what their role is. I think that there are questions for appraisers about liability on everything, right? What the easiest way for me to try to convey this to appraisers is this is data. What you're getting is data, just like your MLS, just like your flood maps, just like your zoning information. Sure, if it's wrong, you have to be able to justify that that was a reliable source of information. But if you look at these forms, it says clearly on there, I did not perform an interior inspection of the property. And when you get to the liability question, you cannot escape the fact that in this country, anybody can be sued for anything. We would be remiss to just say that's not possible. But I can tell you that the way that these forms are designed and the way that the appraisers are looking at these data sources and how they're becoming widespread with all three of our companies and others as well, these have been deemed reliable sources of data, and an appraiser should be able to adequately defend themselves against any claims of not performing their level of due diligence.
The similarity for me and what I've talked to appraisers were, what about new construction? Do you do appraisals off plans and specs? And most all appraisers are comfortable doing those. And why is that? I mean, you haven't seen the house, you've seen dirt. There is no house there. You go take your picture and you're taking a picture of dirt. Yeah, but I got plans and specs. I know you have plans and specs. Does that mean no builder has ever deviated from plans and specs, right? I mean, almost every house has some sort of deviation. So if you're comfortable appraising a property you haven't seen via plans and specs, it really is kind of a similar scenario here. We're basing it off the plans and specifications. That's, as John Brennan's point, that's data. Yeah. This is data on an existing house. It really is kind of a similar situation. And the critical point is the data reliable, right? Can we rely on that data? And that's the big question, right? So Bob asked a question: if an appraiser does a floor plan for an agent, is that deemed to be a prior service if they were to complete an appraisal sometime down the road? Brenan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, putting my USPAP hat back on. Yes, in fact, Bob, that would be right. The example we used to use in USPAP classes is we had somebody who said that they buried the cat in the neighbor's yard for them when they died, and did that constitute a prior service? Well, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I will say that yes, this would, if you did perform the floor plan and then later perform the appraisal, you would need to disclose that you performed a prior service on that property.
Yeah. Priscilla asks, do all three companies charge per scan only, or do you also offer a subscription, maybe an unlimited yearly fee?
For our part, we charge per scan, and the appraiser just bills that into the cost of their appraisal. We are looking at, on the remote val side, some sort of subscription model, and it's not there yet, but it is in the works. But right now it is on a per scan basis.
Ours is a per scan basis when you're leveraging the technology outside of the Class ecosystem.
And same as Mark, we are currently on a per scan, but we are looking at either monthly or annual subscriptions with unlimited use, and maybe even different tiers based on the number of scans.
Very good. Very good. So what, let's say we've got a viewer out there, and we're winding this down, guys, but let's say we got a viewer out there right now, and that, they have been a hard no. I'm never going to do a desktop. And now they've watched, the last 3 days of these webinars, and now they're just kind of on a fence. And guys, my goal wasn't to try and convince you as the practicing appraiser to do a desktop. You've got to make that decision on your own. My role here is to provide you information, right? And that's what we do at Appraiser eLearning. We give these webinars for free. I'm not getting paid to be here today, unfortunately. That's why I need you to take my class next week, right? But it's our way to give back, right? We just hope that when you need some education, you remember us over at Appraiser eLearning. So check us out at appraiserelearning.com. We hope to see you in a class real soon, but these are for information purposes, right? And so let's say, guys, you've got somebody that's watching right now, and they've been a hard no. I'm not going to do the desktop, but I've learned a lot over the last 3 days. I might want a little bit more information, which I'll let you guys give your contact information at the very end. But they're opening their mind to the possibility. Okay. What words of encouragement can you give that person right now to just maybe try it, right? Maybe give it a try. They can always revert back to what they've always done. But what would you say to that person right now, John?
Keep an open mind and be as informed as you can. And again, from your own experiences, right? God, all four of us could go to the same movie and have a different experience when we leave it, and have our own perceptions and feelings about it. And so, again, understand your peers are sharing and providing some feedback, but really see it for yourself, and make the decision on whether or not this fits within your wheelhouse, if you're comfortable doing it. And look, move on from one product to the next. Don't just view mine, view John's, view Mark's, etc. And those products you don't feel comfortable with, don't do them.
Yeah.
And for those that do, continue to ask and demand more. I mean, we get appraisers asking for enhancements all the time.
Yeah, appraisers are not shy about that, are they, John?
No.
And I'll add to that. We've had a lot of converts, just like my counterparts here. We've had a lot of appraisers that thought they did not want to do these, and they've tried them. I had a really great experience last night. I mentioned I was talking to a trainee, and they said, if you're out at dinner and there's a food you've never tried, and you say, okay, I'm going to taste it, I'm just going to try it, and you try it and you don't like it, you just spent 15 or 20 seconds of your life making that decision. If you love it, that's going to last the rest of your life. So
I've used that one too, John, but I've used that one too. Just do what your grandmother told you to do, just try it. You might like it, but I don't know if that's really a good analogy. I've used it. I'm with you. I've used that one, but
it's a good analogy. Brian.
I'm not going to try gasoline. so I don't know. Mark, what about you? Let's say we have a new appraiser. I just bumped into a brand new appraiser in the Cincinnati. Well, we were in Columbus, and had a good conversation with her, and she just feels lost. She's been certified for 5 years. She works by herself. She needs some help. And I'm going to see if there's an opportunity. The interesting thing about that, and I want everybody to listen to me. Opportunities come across your desk probably more often than you think they do. And I'm at this point in my life where if an opportunity falls in my lap, I want to try to seize that opportunity. Now, this young lady had reached out to me, and I apologized to her. I said, did I email you back? She said, no. And I said, I'm so sorry. And she had to kind of remind me of the email, right? She said, I asked you about some Airbnbs. I asked you about this. I asked you about coaching. And she said, I think when my lease is, I'm in Northern Kentucky, and I think when my lease up, I'm going to move to Texas. I said, oh, what part? And she said, Dallas, Fort Worth. I said, really? I said, well, that's quite interesting because I've been thinking about opening an office in Texas. And I know a trainee that's moving to Dallas, Fort Worth. And you're a certified appraiser. Now, whether I get involved or not, maybe I could connect this certified residential appraiser with this trainee in Dallas. And maybe I create an opportunity, not just for the two of them, but for myself. And so, we're in a small world here where you bump into those and you have those opportunities. And I don't know, maybe I don't want to do that, but it's something that I'm going to consider. So those opportunities cross your desk all the time. Mark, what would you say? I've got an appraiser in Northern Kentucky. She's been appraising 5 years. She's looking at expanding. She's wanting to do different things. She's a bright young person, excited about the profession. What would you tell her?
I would say crawl, walk, run. Just as the other folks on the call have said, try it first. And there's some people people who embrace these technologies fully, right? And say, I'm going to just learn this and try it, and it's great. There are others, and I've talked to them, obviously we all have, right? Some of our appraisers, actually some of the most enthusiastic have been some of the older appraisers who are looking to slow down and retire and don't want to jump in the car so often, but they don't want to also just sit back and do nothing. And these types of technologies allow you, if you're in that phase of your career, to say, you know what, I could still do 2 or 3 of these a week and be helpful to, the area and the industry. But I would say look for opportunities to apply this technology. It doesn't have to be a full embrace. None of us here are saying that full appraisals are going away, right? This is just another chunk or another aspect of how the industry is evolving. There's a spectrum here. And that part of the spectrum is hybrid appraisals, is desktop appraisals. You can participate in them. And I would also just encourage everybody to look at the opportunities in your business. I think John Brenan talked about it with disaster inspections, but think about, for example, 1004D update repair inspections, right? I've had appraisers who tell me, just like you said, Brian, I will never, ever do anything like this. I have to inspect and get into that home, and okay, I don't even try to argue that. I simply say, okay, but what if you find subject to repair issue? You find 3 or 4 things that just need to be remediated. Do you really want to drive back out to that property for $150 3 weeks from now, 48 hours before it closes, because that's when they always order them, right? And try to fit this in your schedule? Or could you do a 1004D update repair inspection, and would you be willing to do it virtually just for 5 minutes, connect with somebody and just take the pictures or look at it and go, I'm done, and do it? That's the kind of scenario every single appraiser I've ever talked to has had reticence about this, has said, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I would use it for that, right?
To your point with that, is that available right now? Or, I don't think that's, you tell me, is that permissible right now or no?
It is permissible on the form, and you can do it in private lending. There are policy overlays. For example, Fannie and Freddie have policy overlays right now that don't permit you to do that on a 1004D using a virtual inspection. However, I think it's fair to say, if you look at how aggressively they're moving and how all of us are moving in this space, I think it's fair to say that you're going to see some change and some movement in coming years on that.
Yeah,
subject.
and I hope so, because I'm all in on that one, guys. I don't have them in right now, but I've got the Invisalign, right? And how they scan your teeth. You remember when you were a kid, you went to the orthodontist and they put this goop in the trays, and they put these trays in your mouth and said, I'll be back in a couple minutes. And then they'd be gone longer than they should. They come back and about rip your face off trying to take these trays out to get in there. They don't do that anymore. You know what they do? If you go to the orthodontist, they say, sit back, and they have this little wand and they go around your teeth, and it creates a 3D image of your mouth. It's incredible. I just had granite countertops put in. Guess what they did? They scanned where those countertops were going to go. It's incredible. So I would love that, Mark. I've got one right now where the guy had to add steps to an exterior door and fix a gutter downspout.
Yeah.
I filled my gas tank up. It was $108
right?
yesterday.
Yeah. So much for
I'm
the
going
$150.
to empty my gas tank driving there and back. And so I'm trying to coordinate other inspections around that, right, to make sense. But I don't want this poor person to have to wait on closing their loan. So it's a catch-22. And man, if the virtual technology, the Appraisal Foundation lets you get your CE this way now. So why can't I do a virtual inspection and say, yep, that's the house. I recognize the manufactured home, and I see he's got some wood porching and hand railing there. I see the gutter. Yeah, I'm good. Let me sign this thing, get it to the lender within an hour,
right?
Instead of waiting a week.
And we do this now in like I said, in private lending and investment fix and flip rehab, right? Where you've rehabbed a kitchen and you're like, okay, I want to actually see it work. So, you're with the borrower or the contractor who might be there, and you're virtually looking through their cameras. They're doing it, and you can say, look, turn on the stove for me. Okay, turn the water on. Open the cabinet so I can see that you install the garbage disposal. Flip the light switches on and off. You can view that, and we're having those 1004Ds done now, right? This is working. So that's one area where, to your point, Brian, we could say, look, even if you're kind of going to dip your foot in the water, right? Find the scenarios, whether it's with Class's product, with Clear Capital's product, with are is find the scenarios that you might be comfortable with if you're on the fence and try them. You know, it's
Bryan, if I
not
could
like
just
gasoline, right? It's not going to kill you. It's not gasoline, but
Go ahead, Brenan.
I'm sorry, Mark. Hey, if I get 10 seconds, I just want to say one thing real quickly here. I know we're over time. I think it's important to remember that when we see all these new things coming from the GSEs, the desktops, the hybrids, the different types of assignments, I think it's important to remember they still include the appraiser. There are so many appraisers out there that have the opinion, oh, they're just trying to put us out of business. That is not what's happening. It's just different. And appraisers, to be part of the conversation, need to be willing to accept that change.
You know, it's funny. I make the statement I'm about to make a lot, and a young lady quoted me, posted it on LinkedIn, which was kind of nice. You know, it was, but I say, you know, I don't think appraisers are going anywhere. I think there will always be a need for appraisers. We're trying to measure something that is simply immeasurable. We're trying to measure human behavior, right? And I don't think a machine will ever be able to do that. I think the judgment of a human being will always be needed in our profession. But I think the tools and technology will help us be able to do our job more efficiently. You know, I had a class just the last 2 days, and we were talking about not using the clipboard in the field, using an iPad or something like that. And the guy was like, I'm not doing it. You know, he said, I have a driver. So he drives me from appointment to appointment, and I'm typing. I said, okay, well, this Curtis was his name. Curtis has elected to increase his efficiency by bringing on a helper. I think you can bring on a helper and add efficiency. I also think if you don't want to bring on a helper, you can bring in technology to increase efficiency. For my valuation office, we've elected to do both. We've brought in people as well as technology, and so we're doing both. Guys, thanks so much for being here. If someone wants to, if somebody wants to reach out to you, please, let's just run around John D, John B, and Mark. Give your contact information. What the best avenue to reach out and contact you?
You're on mute, John.
Thanks again. So I included my email address, jdingman at Class Valuation, down in the chat. You can also scan the QR code up here. It does provide you all of my contact information.
Trying to get really fancy with technology, right? So, okay, thanks, John.
Yeah, I put mine in as well, john.brenan at clearcapital.com.
Thank you, John. Mark?
Same for me, mark.walser at incenterms.com, also in the chat. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you guys for being here. And hey, I want to give one more thank you. These guys typically have a booth at our conferences. You know, Appraiser eLearning is a co-host with the National Association of Appraisers for both a spring conference called ACTS, the Appraiser Conference and Trade Show. We move that around the United States. And now we're the new proud co-host of the Appraisal Summit in Las Vegas, and that's coming up in September. And these folks typically have a booth and sponsor and support those events, and I want to thank you for that. And then I just want to close by saying this. If you come to one of those conferences, you can come up and speak to these folks or representatives from their firms. I know I got around to all three, and I think I'm bringing one of my admin people to kind of meet face to face and establish those relationships, right? I know I went over to John's booth and was talking to them about, hey, I want to introduce you to one of my team members, et cetera, et cetera. So it's great to have that opportunity to walk up and meet these folks in person and do a little business. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are typically there. They were there on the webinar yesterday. So we encourage you, if you've never been to a conference, consider joining us out in Las Vegas at the summit. You'll be glad you did, I promise you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Appraisal Report webinar, brought to you as always by the very fine folks of Appraiser eLearning. We've got some classes coming up. If you need some CE, we ask that you remember us. Go to appraiserelearning.com. I've got a class on Monday and Tuesday called Diversifying Your Practice Inside and Out. That means you could take your appraiser hat off and do other things as a non-appraiser, or how to diversify with that appraiser hat on. And did you guys hear the Fed raise 75 basis points? Hello. Might be a great time to think about diversifying your practice. That'll be on Monday and Tuesday. We've got some seats left. And we've got a USPEP class coming up next week. And I even have a live USPEP class coming up in Nashville. So if you want information on that, you can call my office and speak to Claire at 270-302-8866. Until next time, please be safe, make some money, take a little mini vacation. For John Brenan, John Dingeman, Mark Walser, and even Hal Humphreys, this is Bryan Reynolds, your host. Thanks for being here, and happy appraising.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
so
guys.
Thank you.